I'm so excited for our second workshop. We are here to talk about when is the right time to pursue a graduate degree. I mean, you are all professionals in your careers. You are all potentially thinking about it or are already in a graduate degree, or maybe you're considering pursuing an additional graduate degree if you've already got one. This is an extremely pertinent and relevant topic for anybody who's thought about more education. This workshop is for you. I'm really excited for you to experience our guest speaker this evening. It's going to be really insightful, very data-driven. It's going to have a lot of facts and figures that will hopefully help you make the most educated decision about what makes the most sense for you after, I guess, this workshop this evening. So, by the way, my name is Garrett Mintz. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion, and really, you've already started meeting with your mentor. That is awesome. Hopefully you've already set up your first meeting. Maybe you've even already set up your second meeting. If that's the case, that's amazing news. But the focus for this workshop is how can you be intentional about really taking steps forward for yourself professionally. Now, I know that these workshops are on a wide array of topics. Obviously, our first workshop was on how to transition into a managerial role. This workshop's about determining whether or not it's worth it to pursue a graduate degree. But I really want to challenge you that when you're in your mentor meetings, that you are customizing it to your experience for what you want to accomplish with your own career. Because I recognize that some of these workshops are more relevant to you than others, and that's, by the way, completely okay. We bring in really amazing world-class guest speakers to come in and be our guests for these workshops, and that's fantastic. And the ideal goal is that all of them are relevant to you, but I recognize that it varies. And some workshops are going to be more relevant to some people than other people. But what I want you to recognize is that even in this workshop, even if you feel like it's not the most relevant to you, that there's a lot of nuggets. There's a lot of topics that we talk about with our guest speaker that I believe can apply to a lot of situations that you may face in your life. So I'm really excited to get started. Now, one thing that I really want to focus in on, and this is something we talked about last time in our workshop, and that is understanding your strategy, your story, and your state. Those are the three keys to being successful in this program. The most important one, that being state. So physically, where are you? What is going on in your world? Are you having a bad day? Are you having a stressful day? Are you having a difficult time with your significant other? Did your dog just die? I don't care what is going on with your world, no matter how stressful, no matter how mad, no matter how angry, no matter how bad anything is going on in your world, you can change your state in a matter of seconds because your emotions drive your emotions. So what I want you to do right now to get yourself ready for this workshop is I want you to stand up and I want you to shake it out. I want you to shimmy it loose. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. Just go, yeah, just let it loose, let it out, let it go. Because what you're doing is you're letting blood flow to your brain. You're releasing endorphins in your brain. You're getting yourself into a state conducive for receiving information. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when you sit down for too long, you have diminishing returns on your mental investment. Your likelihood of retaining that information is significantly minimized. So I want to challenge you to get up, shake it out, let it loose, get your blood flowing, because your blood's flowing to your brain. Your likelihood of actually remembering this information is significantly higher. Now, when you're going into your mentor relationship, when you're meeting with your mentor, if you can get your blood flowing before those mentor meetings, you're much more likely to retain the information your mentor has to say for you and to you. But if you don't get yourself into a state ready for this mentor relationship, your likelihood of making the most out of that experience diminishes. So I want you to get yourself into a state. Now, the next key is your story. What is the story you tell yourself? Why will you be successful? I'd love to know it. In fact, actually, if you could, post in the comment section, why are you going to be successful? I mean, if in your mind you think, hey, I'm cool with mediocre, I'm cool with just settling, this program is not for you. I can tell you that right now. If you're thinking to yourself, hey, I want to settle, I just want to kind of like not really aspire for too much, you wouldn't be in this mentor program. So what I'm here to tell you is shoot for the stars. Have big, crazy, hairy, audacious goals. And by the way, don't let anybody else judge you for your goal, because your goals are your own. So what is audacious to you may not be audacious to somebody else, and what is audacious to somebody else may not be audacious to you, but that is okay. It's not for you to judge. It is for you to make strides for yourself, because at the end of the day, this program is about personal growth and confidence, helping you put yourself into the best position for you to succeed. So if you can tell yourself a story for why you will be marginally to exemplary, significantly better than where you're at the beginning of this program, that is awesome, and that is where I want you to go. That's where I want you to be. Now, the last part is your strategy. What is the strategy that you're going to do to start putting yourself in the best position to succeed? Now, this program, this workshop specifically, is about when is the right time to pursue a graduate degree. Now, one thing that I strongly encourage you to do, because here's the thing, at the end of the day, your strategies are all about routines, both we think about routines both in the bad sense as well as the good sense. Bad routines are, things that we consider habits, bad habits, they're bad. But we typically have a negative connotation around habits just because of so many bad habits we've heard about. But there's a lot of things and a lot of beneficial things with good habits. So what are things that you can do on a daily, regular basis that helps you prepare for anything that you want to be better at? That is what I want to focus on. So one strategy that you can implement is implementing a SWOT analysis on a monthly basis of your life, of your career, of your higher education experience, of anything. Doing a SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So if you're currently right now in a job and you're thinking to yourself, I'm contemplating a graduate degree, but I don't really know right now, what you'll want to think about is, what are the strengths of pursuing a graduate degree? What are the weaknesses of pursuing a graduate degree? What are the opportunities of staying in your current role? And what are the threats to leaving your current role for this graduate degree? If you can lay this out for yourself, it will help you on a substantial level towards making the most educated decision for yourself for why you should or should not pursue a graduate degree. Now, our guest speaker this evening is going to talk about the literal specific facts and figures of financially, when does it make sense for you to get a graduate degree, and when does it not make sense for you to get a graduate degree? And so I think you're going to really enjoy what our guest speaker has to say about this, because the insight is unbelievable. I think you're going to really enjoy it. But in terms of the strategies, I want you to do a SWOT analysis to help you prepare for that. The other thing is, I want you to start having more informational interviews beyond just your mentor. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what stage of life you are in. You can have conversations with people. Just because you're not a quote unquote current college student in a collegiate sense, you're still a student of life. You're still a student of professional outcomes. And by being willing to admit that you're still a student, you can take the knowledge of somebody else. You can say, hey, I'm a student. I'm interested in learning more about XYZ field. Would you be willing to have a coffee with me or a conversation with me? That is a great conversation starter for you to learn more about other fields, because at the end of the day, it's not about stagnating. It is about growing. It is about learning. It is about being uncomfortable and being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So those are the key points I really want you to take away from our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to jump into our guest speaker. By the way, if you've not connected with me on LinkedIn yet, please do so. We have a LinkedIn community, a Ambition in Motion group where all of us participate in it. We can post our questions. Our entire community can answer them or see them or relate to them. It's a really cool place to be. If you don't have a LinkedIn, absolutely get a LinkedIn. If you do have a LinkedIn, you have not connected with me, I strongly encourage it. I'm so excited to get started, and I'm so excited for you to experience our guest speaker this evening. Thanks for your time. I'm looking forward to get this guest interview going. Hey everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening. We're here to talk about when is the right time to switch jobs. Now, this is never, it's not an exact science. It's not something that it works for one person, it's going to work for every person the exact same way, but we're here to talk about it in a way that allows us to think a little more analytically about what do we want out of our career, what do we want out of our next move. We've got a great guest with us this evening. His name is Chip Stapleton. Chip is the director of training for a company called Horizon Planning Group. He's also an adjunct professor. He's also been a sales manager. Chip has been in multiple roles, and he's experienced multiple companies and multiple work scenarios and settings. And so I'm really excited to bring him in here because I think he's got a lot of great insight and knowledge to share just about when is the right time to switch jobs and how can we go about thinking about this situation for ourselves and for our career and making sure that we're making the right choices for ourselves. Chip, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, Chip, we're talking about when is the right time to switch jobs. And like I said, it's not an exact science, but I'd love for you just to share with our audience, what has your career trajectory been?
Oh, my career trajectory, it's been a little bit all over the place, to be honest. I mean, you have to go back to all the way what I originally studied to be in college, which was a band director, a high school band director. And that was a very trying time. I don't know if anyone study or wants to study music. It's a very fun thing to study, but it's very hard. And it's a lot of work to do. I got all the way through 15 out of 16 weeks through student teaching. So we're talking like 95% away done with my degree, and decided I didn't want to be a band director. That decision was really, I just kept running against a wall. I wanted to succeed. I just could never, ever break through that wall. And eventually I just tired out. and decided to go do something else. That switched into me.
I think I would love to just point out just a real quick thing. So you decided to you were 95% done with the degree. What made you at that moment, because you had other student teaching gigs, you had been an experience in this, you kind of knew what you were getting into.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you decide at that moment to pull out? Why didn't you say, well, I just get this degree, and if I don't like it, I can transition to something else? What was your thought process around that?
The thought process was, at that point, talking with my mentors, and the main mentor I had he was actually my junior high band director, a guy I'd known for a decade. Talking with him was, at that point where I had not progressed to the point where I was actually going to pass student teaching. So I effectively failed as a student teacher in that situation. And it was one of those things that, okay, my choices in front of me are, I can go do student teaching again and put myself through that rigmarole, I guess, again. Or I guess, for the lack of better terms, I could cut my losses and move on. And I chose the latter because I didn't want to do student teaching again. That experience was a very strong growing experience for me, but not one I wanted to go through again.
That's a great story, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing. I think that's a really big component to just successfully making transitions, is just being open to say, hey, this is not for me. This is where I failed, and this is where I fell flat on my face, and this is not where I want to be anymore. And I think kudos for you for having the confidence to say, you know what, I don't care if I've spent 3 years or however many years training to be a band director. This is not what I want to do, because 3 years for a career of 40 is peanuts, right?
Yep, exactly.
So what happened next?
So after that, I got my degree in saxophone and physics. If you know me at all, which we've talked a lot, I'm very analytical and artistic at the same time. So it fits me well. I took my gap year 5 years late. I took a year off of pretty much everything. I worked as an assistant manager for a jewelry store. So I started getting some sales management experience and direct retail sales experience. Decided I wanted to go to grad school. This was right around 2008, 2009. So, economy was tanking. I did what a lot of people do. It's like, I'm just going to delay the real world for a little bit, go to grad school. Ended up getting my master's in music technology, which led directly to my first real career, which was in acoustics at a company here in Indianapolis. That's where I had ended up being the residential sales manager, designing multi-million-dollar home theaters for multi-million-dollar houses. Really a fun job, a lot of fun with it, and really enjoyed the work for a while. Then it started getting to the point where I wasn't getting as much out of it as I was. So it wasn't to the point I was hitting a wall like I was when I was student teaching. I was very successful, had a lot of fun with it. I grew the business by like 150% year over year, like 2 years in a row. A lot of success. It's just that success wasn't as fulfilling anymore. And on top of that, we had some culture shift changes with a new boss, new CEO that came in, which led to a shift away from my market. So they stopped investing in what I was doing, the company did. And at that point, I knew that writing was kind of on the wall. I was successful in what I was doing, but my path forward in that company, I could tell, was pretty much gone. What I wanted to do there, I couldn't do. So that's how I realized, okay, I'm not getting as much out of this as I used to. And my path forward is evaporated in front of my eyes. So those two things, the opportunity to move forward was gone, and I wasn't happy. Decided to move on into really what became where I am now, which is at Horizon Planning Group. So that change of jobs was realizing that I was doing the work, I was successful, things were going well. I just was ready for something next and just wasn't fulfilled.
What's so interesting about that story, and what I really like about it is that it showcases the concept and the notion that you can be good at something and not like it. I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that. And I think it's a tough pill to swallow, because you think to yourself, I've been working so hard to be good at this one thing, or find a thing that I'm really good at. And I found the thing that I'm really good at, but I don't actually enjoy doing it. Um, I would imagine a lot of other people would have stayed in that situation, um, just because. But I think kudos to you for making the change, because obviously it was the right move.
Yeah, definitely. And I was actually talking a little bit about that with a friend of ours, Aaron, the other day. And he was going through a similar situation, or has gone through a similar situation, where it was just, you're dreading doing what you do. Like, you go and you're passionate about doing it at first, and then you grow into dreading it. And it's just not something that you ever plan on doing. It's just something that happens over time. The work that you like doing and you enjoy doing, you're good at, eventually became a chore.
What I'd be curious to know is there a way, how can, as an individual professional, how can you, is there a way to try to avoid that kind of outcome? Like, no one plans on eventually dreading the work, but I do think, not as you burnout, but it happens. Like, you kind of grow distant. Is there a way to reinvigorate yourself, or is it on the company to try to invigorate you and know those times to kind of jump in?
I think it needs to be a combination of both. Having the culture and the leadership in your company to encourage professional development, to encourage growth in you, so that you can continue growing what you do and what you like, and start getting more out of it, maybe just in a different direction. Or maybe it's, instead of growing into like a promotion or a raise, it just becomes giving you a different perspective on what you're doing. Maybe giving you an idea to approach it from a different direction, where you can see, hey, I do actually still like this. So those mentors, whether it's going through a mentorship program, or using the mentors inside your own company, or a mentor that you went to, a professor you went to school with, like, calling on those people is like, hey, used to like doing this. I'm not sure if I do anymore. What's something I could do to help with this? Having those people to act as a sounding board can be very valuable in those situations. Because then they can be like, well, it sounds like, you could try this. If that doesn't work, maybe it's time to find something new. So they can help you make that decision. And having those trusted people inside your life is incredibly important, I found.
I love how you talk about mentors. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge fan of mentorship. I appreciate it. That's a great segue. Yeah, into the question of, not only is it a segue, but I think it's an eye opener for me. On my notes, I had, talking about, okay, when is the right time to switch jobs? But I think what you open up the door to is, how can we leverage our mentors to help us weigh when it is the right time to switch jobs, and help us open up our eyes for what our current company, our current situation could potentially allow us or provide for us. So then we can be consistently engaged at work, and maybe
Definitely.
think about work in a different way. I love that you brought that up. Are there other ways that your mentors can help you beyond just, well, I guess I love to, I'm personally curious. I'd love to dive deeper into the ways a mentor can help you, or ways a mentor in the past has helped you find work more invigorating.
I think, me personally, one of my mentors, again, it's a guy his name is David Fisher. The way he's helped me kind of get re-engaged inside of when I've hit a wall, or when I'm in a trough of my business where things are going bad and I'm having a bad day, is he's helped me focus on a short-term goal. Maybe it's a week or a month, something short-term that you can work on. And he's helped me keep accountable to it. And then once I reach that goal, it's a celebration. You make sure you celebrate those little goals each time they happen. And that can help create momentum, help get you re-excited about those things. Kind of, you're doing work like around the house. So you have, like, you want to clean your house a little bit, and you develop this checklist. Just the act of checking something off can get you more engaged into the next step, which then it creates a habit of engagement into your process. That's how a mentor's helped me in the past.
Gosh, that's a powerful, powerful story. Tony Robbins talks about, like, these core values. Like, some people are driven by consistency. Some people are driven by variety. Some people are driven by significance. Some people are driven by growth. Some people are driven by contribution. But there's one other area that I always found surprising was this, that other people are driven by, and they're driven by celebration. The ability to celebrate that. That's a massive dopamine injection in your life and in your mind. I know I'm guilty of this. I'm assuming probably other people in the audience watching this right now are guilty of it too. And that is that when I hit a goal, I sometimes won't celebrate it. Sometimes I'll just be like, okay, on to the next one. Let's move on to the next one, on to the next one. But I realize that does create a weird imbalance with my own mind, because then I eventually get to this, not necessarily this burnout period, but I get to this point where I'm like, I've not taken time to celebrate this. Sometimes it causes you a question of what am I doing? And like, how am I, in reality, you have so much fun from the wins that you do have, but it is so important to celebrate those wins. And I think that was a massive nugget of wisdom. So for anybody watching this, if you're not celebrating your wins, that could be a huge reason for your potential frustration.
Without a doubt.
So what are your thoughts on when the right time is to switch jobs, beyond just, maybe this doesn't feel right, or it's lost its allure to me? Are there other factors that play into the role of, and you kind of touched on it earlier when you had switched manager or CEOs at that previous company you were at. I think I've heard the adage, people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. Are there any other factors? Well, one, could you dive into that supervisor boss kind of notion of why one may want to quit a job? But two, are there any other factors that you've identified as being key critical components for why people may want to switch?
Yeah, so for the switching of bosses, I mean, your leadership or the leadership of the company that you're in, the job that you're in, or if you are the leader in the company job that you're in, it has a direct impact on the culture of your company. Leadership, our culture is top down. You can try to change the culture from the bottom, but the leadership isn't bought in. I mean, it's just an uphill battle constantly. And it can be, every culture decision you make can be completely derailed. So when you have that leader that changes the culture and changes the values inside that culture just slightly, it can really derail some of the momentum that you've tried to build. And that's what happened to me at my former company. Was the focus of the market that I was in went away. And I stopped wanting to invest as heavily in that market, which completely ruined the plan that I had for that next year, which would ruin the growth that I wanted to do. So that's kind of how that leadership change affected me in my world. And I've read articles and stories about, that one leadership change that took the company to the next level, where a leadership change can actually have a positive impact, and often does have a positive impact, but it can very at the same time have a negative impact on certain individuals because it doesn't line up with their values.
Yeah, this makes me think of work orientation. Now, everybody's in our mentor program, they're aware of the work orientation assessment. But I know your work orientation, Chip, you're career oriented. And I would imagine at this junction in your life, you're maybe even more career oriented than you are right now. And that would make a ton of sense, because in this scenario, what you just said right there was so critical. Your opportunity for growth was pulled away from you, and they did not create a clear line for how you could grow. And what so often happens is we as leaders, we oftentimes will subscribe to a one-size-fits-all leadership philosophy, and that will resonate well with the people that it works for. So for career-oriented people, having a clear growth path for how you can achieve this role or achieve this status or get to this level is motivating. That's really great. But people who are calling-oriented, their motivation isn't as much that. It's more about making an impact. And so having conversations around how not only are we impacting our company, but also our communities and the people we serve, that would be really impacting for calling-oriented people, but not as much for career-oriented people. And if you're job-oriented, it's all about work-life balance. It's all about how to work on the business, in the business. So essentially, how can you be more efficient at work so then you can live the life you want to live outside of work? And so all of that is kind of combined to say, it wasn't actually even the change in management, but it was what they decided to incentivize you with. Like, I would imagine that if this new CEO came to you and said, you know what, Chip, I know that this kind of dashed this growth trajectory for you, but here's a new growth trajectory that we think you can hit. We think it's going to be really cool and rewarding and valuable to you. I would imagine that you would have considered staying for a bit longer because you would have been more interested in seeing that through. But because they didn't provide that path for you, you weren't as keen.
Definitely. It was the way they tried to motivate me to stay was with a raise, which with where I am right now, where I was then, that wasn't my motivating factor. I mean, the job I took was technically a pay cut. So money wasn't the issue there. It was, what path am I on? How can I move forward on it? And there was no path forward. So if they would have given me one, I would have been more likely to stay. You're right.
That's interesting. So let's talk about finances, because I think that is a critical component. Because finances, what's interesting, finances are a fascinating topic because they can be motivating to, well, not typically as calling oriented people. For career oriented people, a lot of times people will view money as status. So it's like, I'm earning this not because I want to earn it. It makes me think of like LeBron James or a professional athlete. Like LeBron James has hundreds of millions of dollars. That extra $5 million on his annual contract doesn't necessarily materially change his life, but it's from a respect level. It's from a like, I have achieved this status level. That's why he wants those funds. That's why he wants that annual salary. So for career-oriented people, that can be motivating if it's perceived as being a status level up. And for job-oriented people, that raise can be motivating because it allows you to do more things on the weekends. It allows you to maybe have a better vacation or spend more time with family or do more things with your family. Also motivating to job-oriented people as well. That's really interesting. Sorry, I'm diving deeper into the work orientation, but I think it's fascinating. But I'd love to learn your thoughts. How do finances play into the role of switching jobs? Because oftentimes I'll talk to people and they say, oh, I'm ready to switch jobs. I'm not getting paid enough here. Sometimes the grass isn't always green on the other side. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. I think that kind of gets to a point I wanted to make too, which I'll get to after this. A big reason to change, maybe a lot of people do change, is that they feel or sometimes are grossly undercompensated. If it's tiny bit undercompensated, that can be made up for by culture, that can be made up for a good environment, the good people around them. I used to play in a jazz combo with a drummer, and he said, I will take any gig as long as it covers two of these three things: good pay, good music, or good audience. If it covers two of those three, he'll do the gig. But if it's just one of them, he won't do it. So if it's just good pay, but it's bad people and bad music, or bad audience and bad music, he won't do it. Or if it's a good audience, but it's bad music and bad pay, he won't do it. So there a level that he knew in his mind what he needed to do. And we all have that kind of math we do in our head of what is the level of compensation we will take to do this particular job. And a lot of times doing that math can lead to decisions that are a little more short-sighted. Like you said, the grass is greener. It's actually something I have in my notes right here. Having that grass is greener mentality can lead you to, just taking whatever job that comes up next that pays more, which isn't always the best option for you, because it could lead to another toxic environment. It could lead to another company who goes through management just as fast as your old ones. You're going to deal with the exact same thing in 2 years and have to do it again. So if you are more career oriented like I am, or calling oriented, having that type of constant change may hurt the way you view your career and make you want to change again. So that brings me to my point of when it's a good time to look for a job or leave a job. And the one note I have here is because you're coasting. You're comfortable in where you are. I was told when I was first moved over, started building my financial advising practice, that never quit after a bad month. Wait until you have a good month and then see if you want to quit. If you want to quit after you have a good month, okay, then now there's an actual reason behind I'm just not doing well. Because where am I going? If it's going well, you're less likely to fall into that grass is greener trap, where you just take the next job just to get out of where you are now. In the end, waiting till when you're comfortable, it puts you in control of the situation. Because if you don't like that offer, well, you still have this position that is good. You like it. You're doing well in it. You're comfortable, but maybe you're not growing the way you want to. So I think that's looking when you're comfortable can be a positive thing. I know that's kind of a weird way to think about it, looking for a job when you're happy at it. But it's an interesting view. It also kind of comes from my dad, who always told me, listen to every opportunity. When an opportunity is presented to you, you listen to it. And sometimes the opportunity, that dream position at that dream company, it just presents itself, and you're like, well, I have to listen to this and I have to take this. I'm happy where I am now, but this is what I've been working for 30 years or 15 or however long. So changing jobs isn't also always necessitated by a bad situation or not being paid enough. Sometimes it's comes out of a positive growth experience or an opportunity that presents itself. I think being open to that more often than not can lead to better decisions on the job changing front.
What are your work preferences?
Say that again?
I said, what are your work preferences?
My work preferences?
Yeah, because you had mentioned that there's that guy in the jazz band where he said if the pay wasn't right, the audience wasn't right, or the music wasn't right, he'd do it. What are your three? I'd love to learn, or what are the 2 out of 3 that need to be hit for you? But really, I think this is a great question for the audience. Post in the comment section. What are the 2 out of 3 criteria that you need to have for your work to be satisfying and fulfilling for you? Post in the comment section. Chip, for you, what are those?
One is it needs to satisfy my analytical and artistic mind. That's why I got into financial advising, is because you had a very analytical side. There's also this art side to it too, where you can have some creative ways to build investments, creative ways to think inside of someone's finances and help them save more money. So having that, both sides of my brain be activated helps me. So if I have that, I'm happy. If I have a flexible schedule, so my family and I love to travel, which is why this pandemic thing is just killing us right now. So having a flexible schedule so we're able to travel as much as we want to is incredibly important for me. And then the third one is having the path forward. He said, I'm a career-oriented person. So having that path, that growth path forward is very important to me. I figured if I get 2 of those things, or if I get all 3 of them, the pay is going to take care of itself. And the compensation will take care of itself. So.
That makes sense. That's cool. So I'd love to chat about another topic on the topic of the cost of switching jobs. What is the cost of switching jobs? What are potentially some of the unforeseen expenses or costs? Sometimes they don't necessarily have to be financial; they could be personal or professional. Of switching jobs that sometimes people don't fully take into account or fully flush out before making the switch.
That's a fantastic question. The first one that really comes to mind is, at least that I've had some friends and me personally not necessarily think about as heavily, is the amount of travel involved. Going into a job, saying on the application it says 25% travel. You're like, oh, that's not that much. And then you realize, wait, that's 1 week per month of travel. And realizing that could have a high personal cost, particularly if you have kids and you have a family. Being away from them 1 week a year means you're missing stuff. And the last thing you want to do is, miss that soccer game where they score that first goal, or miss those first steps of your newborn or your 1-year-old. Those type of things. Those are kind of some costs that can come into maybe unforeseen, or maybe not unforeseen because it was stated, but not completely flush out what they actually mean. Then there's, I think, the benefit conversation is important. Everyone, most companies you work with are going to offer health insurance and dental and vision and paid time off and all that fun stuff. but they don't often say how much is paid for by the company. So you go from one company where they're covering 70% of your health insurance, move to another one, they're covering 30%. All of a sudden, that's a much bigger bill that falls in your head that you didn't think about. Or you go to a company that is pure 1099, and now you're in charge of all of those benefits on your own. So you have to go to the marketplace. Oh, and on top of that, you also are in charge of the other 7.65% of your Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, all the self-employment tax. So there's some other costs. Cost of moving sometimes is not thought of as much. If you're going from working in an office to working at home, the cost of developing a home office. So that could be equipment, that could be getting a good webcam and a mic and good lighting in your house. So when you have a web meeting, they can actually see you well. And hopefully that technology works, right, Garrett? Yeah, those are just some of the, I mean, there's probably thousands. We could have a conversation all day about other things that you didn't think about when you wanted to change a job.
I think those are really good points to bring up. I think that's a fascinating avenue to look at. I think all the points you brought up are really valuable, and I think you're absolutely right. Those are a lot of things that people just don't think about when it comes to switching jobs. Where do I go to if I'm genuinely curious? I'm not necessarily interested in switching jobs, but I'm just curious. I want to know what's out there. Where can I go to find out about new opportunities? I mean, beyond just the Indeed or the Glassdoors or wherever. Like, where can I go to maybe expand my network, learn about what other people are doing? How can I go about doing that?
I mean, the easiest place for that is LinkedIn by far. It is very easy to get connected to virtually anyone in any market, whether that's through just kind of cold inviting them like, hey, I'm trying to grow my market, kind of cold invite type stuff, or utilizing the market you're currently in and trying to get introduced into a new market. So I'm connected with you, Garrett, and you're connected with someone in investment banking, and I want to go into investment banking. You're like, hey, can you make an introduction to me? So I just use you as my connector to them. You make the introduction, and then that can set me on the path into the next market. LinkedIn is fantastic for that. They also have a job board on LinkedIn that you can look at too. And I think the other thing you can do, don't be afraid of face-to-face networking and marketing. I think the website's Eventbrite, where you could just type in your city and type in free events. And there'll be 5 or 6 free events like that week that you could go to just to meet people and talk about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to get. I think the key there is having on those face-to-face things is having a goal going into that event. It's like, I'm going to talk to 5 people and I'm going to tell them what I want out of my next job or what I'm looking for in my next job. I'm not going to tell them what I'm doing now. I'm going to tell them what I want then. And then that can help guide your language, the scripts, and the 30-second elevator pitches that you practice or 30-second commercials that you practice. And it can help you be more successful in those events. I'm an introvert by nature. I know once I get talking, I just never stop. I understand that. But I'm an introvert. I don't like social events. So if I have those deadline kind of, this is the goal I want to have by the end of this thing, it helps me get through there. So once I get there, if I get the first 30 minutes, I'm done with those 5, I can spend the rest of the day, sitting against the wall being a wallflower, and I'll have a successful night. Do whatever, or I can just go home and hang out with my family. Like whatever makes me happy, as long as I do what I'm supposed to do in that time period. Or I could stay and get 5 more so I don't have to go out tomorrow. But having that goal is incredibly important on those face-to-face events. In the end, you just have to go out and do it. As with all things, you got to do the work.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I want to talk about one other key point here that's very relevant to you is, do you consider your education a waste even though your career is very different from what your education is?
I absolutely don't. For a few reasons. One, I am adjunct faculty teaching music. I teach saxophone lessons and some drill music classes at IUPUI here in Indianapolis. And go Jaguars. So there's that. I'm using it, even though right now I consider it much more of a paid hobby. And I realized that the study of music to the point of, borderline mastery of saxophone, and doing it at a top institution like the Jacobs School of Music at IU, it's instilled in me a work ethic and a process of learning, which is a very translatable skill to virtually any industry. You can translate that repeatable process. So I developed a repeatable process to learn a piece of music. And I really process and apply it to anything. I could provide it to sales. I could provide it to investment analysis. I can apply it to client communications, to marketing. I can apply it to all of these things, learn how to do it, and then just hit play and just keep repeating that process over and over again until success, right? Repeat your way to riches. I think that's the way it goes. So if I had a choice to go back, I would study music 10 times out of 10. I enjoyed it. I love it. I've often said going to music school teaches you how to hate music, and then you spend the rest of your life trying to figure out why you loved it in the first place. Thankfully for me, it didn't quite take the rest of my life. It just took not having a career in it to fall back in love. And oddly enough, weird factoid about me, after my student teaching experience, I stopped listening to music like altogether for about 6 months. So I have a degree in music. I stopped listening to music. At my car, complete silence. At home, nothing. Studying, silence. And what broke that, making me want to listen to music, and you're never going to guess what artist it was actually Kesha. Her album Animal was just like, I heard it and I'm just like, now that is something different. Now it's complete formulated pop. There's nothing like intellectually stimulating about the music, but it was so different and simple from what I was doing before that it brought me back into music. So I have to thank Kesha for my staying in music. Oddly enough.
I would have guessed that.
That's the way it goes, right? You never know what's going to bring you back.
That's interesting. But I think that a story can apply to a lot of things. The simplicity of something can really lighten our fire to help us appreciate a lot of times the little things. I think music's a great example of that, but I think there's a lot of other scenarios where you can think about, I'm thinking of a music example right now. I think of like I'll listen to a song and the one thing that will call out to me is the cowbell. Someone's like hitting a cowbell in the background. It's like do 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 do, and it's like a whole song, the whole production's going on around it, but all I'm hearing is this cowbell, which does make me think of the Blue Oyster Cult SNL skit with Will Ferrell, which is hilarious. I just the point though is that when it comes to your career, when it comes to your work, it can be easy to get frustrated at a lot of little things, but there's a lot of value in finding the gratitude in a lot of the little things that make you appreciate the work that you are doing, and that could be something that for a lot of people can really help keep them holding on to what they're doing or find that opportunity to transition to something new.
Definitely, and it kind of comes back to a point we made earlier about celebrating those small victories. I've found that I spend a lot more time thinking about the stuff that went wrong. Think about the mistakes I made. Just in this conversation right here, I've thought about like 15 words and I'm like, why did I say it that way? I think it's kind of human nature to focus on the negative, even though the positive happens probably a lot more than the negatives happen. I've said a lot more words correctly than I've said wrong, yet I only remember those 15 words I said wrong. I don't know if it's 15, it's probably pretty close. So celebrating those good things help us notice the good things more. And then the bad things a little bit less. And so again, it's about the true perspective of how good or how bad we are at something. If we only pay attention to the bad stuff and we only tell us about the bad stuff, then we're going to think we're awful.
Totally.
That's another kind of that motivational aspect and why celebrating those good things is so important.
It's a great point. Well, Chip, this has been a great workshop. Thanks for being here this evening. This was a really great topic. I think our audience got a lot from you this evening. I think there's a lot of things to think about in terms of determining when the right time is to switch jobs. I think you really shed light on some really great points. How can our audience learn more about you? How can they connect with you? How can they learn more about you, any of the work that you're doing?
I'd say find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there. My email address, my cell phone number is on LinkedIn. Send me a connection invite. Say, hey, I saw you talk with Garrett. I'll connect. Text me, call me. I'll be more than happy to talk.
Awesome. Chip, thanks for being here. Everybody, thank you all for being here tonight. This was a great workshop. I look forward to seeing you at our next workshop. See ya.